I'm just a random guy on YouTube right now, sharing with you the unfiltered truth of what most people don't tell you. You think you're escaping the 9 to 5, and reality is this is a 24-hour grind, man. You're in this journey right now, which will morph you into someone that you only dreamed of, but you have to be willing to pay the price. When I started off, I had a mentor called Bill Howroyd. You can search him up on Google. He's one of the wealthiest men in England. And the way I was able to, get close to this guy was because I grew up in a neighborhood in a place called Oldham, right? And he was the chairman of the local youth zone. This guy, a massive philanthropist. And I had the opportunity one time to pay a visit to a man's house called Sir Norman Stoller, another wealthy man worth over £500 million, right? And Sir Norman Stoller invited myself and this bunch of other kids from these youth zones, because we were from the inner city, extremely poor areas in Manchester, England. And I remember going to the Lake District, and the first time I'm seeing what money is. And I had the opportunity to speak to Bill, and Bill, invested heavily into a company called AO. If you're in England, you know the company. AO, let's go. He invested early into the seed round, and he knew the guys that started off there. And I remember approaching Bill when I was a very young teenager at this point. I said, I want to be in your position. And years later, when I first started on my journey, I called Bill and I said, hey, Bill, it's Boris. I don't know if you remember me, but I was that kid from X, Y, and Z. He said, yes, I remember you. How have you been? And I explained to him, this great idea that I had when I first started my journey, right? And he says, do you know what? Come to my estate. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a sit down. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, I've made it, right? I've absolutely made it. This guy has so much money, he might invest into it. And it turns out he did not invest anything. And I was like, okay, cool. 3 months, 6 months goes by. I call Bill again. I'll send him an email and I'm like, Bill, hey, I would like to see if you'd be willing to invest into this company. And Bill doesn't invest, but he leaves me with the most important lesson I have ever learned, which has completely transformed how I view entrepreneurship. And it's more about discipline. He shares with me his story. So when he first started, he quits his job when he first starts off, right? Quits his job, and he told me, Boris, for 2.5 years, I worked as a butcher whilst building this company. And it was I believe it was a food storage company that was based in Rochdale, England. And he tells me it was the worst time of my life, man. Like, so much uncertainty, having anxiety attacks. And he's cutting meat one day just to be able to, pay his bills. He's going to the pub and people are saying, how's that business going? And as an entrepreneur, you might be experiencing that. And for me, when I heard that, he looked at me and said, if you're not willing to last 2.5 years eating shit, maybe this idea of entrepreneurship isn't for you. Because he was telling me that the idea of fast food entrepreneurship, the ability to go from point A to point B in no time, was an absolute lie. Because it also required a transformation of your inner man. It also required a transformation of yourself, understanding patience and killing the ego. Imagine you're this entrepreneur that sold people a big dream of who you are and what you're going to do, and people see you cutting meat at the butchers. I took that story as, Boris, if you're not willing to last 2.5 years eating shit, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you. Because the timeline that you have for yourself, probably double it or maybe even triple it. Because you're writing your own story of entrepreneurship off the back of people that, that are anomalies. Well, Bill sold his company 10 years later when he started off for over 200 million, which in today's currency is about $500 million. But if he didn't eat shit for 2.5 years, he wouldn't be in that position. This man's house is an estate